Baghdad, Iraq, and vowing to retaliate if Americans are killed. It was the largest rocket attack on the diplomatic compound in a decade. Lucas Tomlinson reporting live from the Pentagon on this. Lucas?
Rick, President Trump threatening Iran after 21 rockets were fired at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq earlier this week. Quote, "Our embassy in Baghdad got hit Sunday by several rockets. 3 rockets failed to launch. Guess where they were from? Iran. Now we hear chatter of additional attacks against Americans in Iraq. Some friendly health advice to Iran. If 1 American is killed, I will hold Iran responsible. Think it over." Iran's foreign minister responding a few hours ago. Donald Trump uses a worthless photo to recklessly accuse Iran. Last time the U.S. ruined our region with WMD fabrications, wasting $7 trillion and causing 58,976 American casualties. Far worse this time. Trump will bear full responsibility for any adventurism on his way out. Monday, the guided missile submarine USS Georgia transited the Strait of Hormuz and slipped into the Persian Gulf. It's the first time this type of weapon has ventured into the Persian Gulf in 8 years. The submarine carries over 150 Tomahawk cruise missiles and has a dry deck shelter to deploy Navy SEALs for potential sabotage operations. Escorting the sub through the volatile strait, a pair of guided missile cruisers, USS Port Royal and Philippine Sea, also armed with dozens of Tomahawks as well. A few days ago, USS John Paul Jones test-fired her 5-inch gun, another not-so-subtle message. The guided missile destroyer is also armed with dozens of Tomahawks. Hundreds of cruise missiles are now in range of Iran, ready to strike in minutes and destroy any Iranian targets if ordered. And the USS Nimitz is also in the area and can launch dozens of F-18 Super Hornets like this. Air Force jet fighter squadrons are also in the area. B-2 and B-52 bombers can deploy from the U.S. on short notice if needed. Today on Christmas Eve, over 60,000 U.S. troops are deployed to the Middle East. This as the one-year anniversary of the U.S. killing Iran's most powerful general on January 3rd looms. Rick?
And Lucas, thoughts and prayers to all those service members overseas during this holiday season. Thanks very much for that.
Indeed.
Sources telling Fox News President-elect Biden is considering Boston Mayor Marty Walsh for Labor Secretary, but that there are concerns over diversity in the cabinet. Jackie Heinrich reporting live on this from Wilmington, Delaware. Jackie?
Good afternoon, Rick. Before sources tell me Boston Mayor Marty Walsh is being strongly considered for Labor Secretary, but racial diversity considerations are weighing heavily on President-elect Joe Biden's decision, and it could cost him the job. Mayor Walsh is a longtime union member and leader and has curried support from a number of union heads, including Richard Trumka of the AFL-CIO. He's seen by Democrats as a path to construction workers and other laborers who supported President Trump. And Walsh has a long-standing relationship with Joe Biden, who presided over his second inauguration in 2018. Walsh, like Biden, is Catholic and has been open about his struggles with alcoholism, now more than 25 years sober. The men agree on several priorities, including labor issues and climate change, but 2 sources say despite this relationship to Biden, Walsh's status as a white man is not helpful to his chances. Biden's been under continued pressure to appoint a diverse cabinet, and as he makes his final picks, caucus groups have been jockeying. The Congressional Black Caucus said the post is critically important for black communities, and the Asian American and Pacific Islander Caucus called on Biden to appoint an AAPI nominee to any remaining cabinet spot, writing, as more cabinet nominees are announced, it is clear that this could be the first time in over 2 decades that there will not be a single AAPI secretary serving in a presidential cabinet. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus is also making a push.
We're not stopping because the Hispanic community is the largest minority population in the entire nation. President-elect Joe Biden has really followed through with his word in creating a diverse cabinet, but we're still going to push for another Latina.
Now, one source told me it's not just race that Biden is factoring in, but also a diversity of experiences and viewpoints. His final decision has not been made. Rick?
Jackie Heinrich in Wilmington. Jackie, thanks very much. Fox News has learned that the Justice Department is weighing whether to appoint a special counsel to take over the Hunter Biden investigation. This despite Bill Barr dismissing the idea during his final days as Attorney General. His replacement, the acting AG, Jeffrey Rosen, telling Reuters that he would do things on the basis of the law and the facts. Joining me now, Jim Trusty, former DOJ prosecutor. Jim, thanks for being with us.
Sure.
What do you know about Jeffrey Rosen?
Well, I know he's never been a prosecutor. He's got a good reputation. He's been in government, but he's only been in the Department of Justice for a little over a year, and that was again, starting off as the Deputy Attorney General. So there are some pretty momentous issues that are pending right now in the Department of Justice, and it's a little unsettling to have somebody who has so little experience in prosecution at the helm.
And Jim, you're surprised that the former AG Bill Barr elected not to appoint a special counsel?
Well, I'm more like puzzled. It's not totally surprising. He's got access to a lot more inside information than we have, and he's been great at presiding over a department that doesn't leak all of its internal business. So it's unclear what he's thinking, but the basic premise for special counsel is you don't want prosecutors in the executive branch investigating matters that touch on their bosses. And so that's the concern here. And I think it's a pretty legitimate concern from the outside. Like, why wouldn't this be an issue if you're investigating the new president's son?
Right. And Jim, we mentioned earlier that some in Washington are calling this textbook conflict of interest.
Right, maybe. But I tell you, I think there's so many moving parts right now. It's getting real intriguing. And I think we're going to see something big on this matter within the next 4 weeks. I mean, it's a very conspicuous leak of the information from the Biden camp. They were the ones that said that Hunter has some tax issue, which might be a very optimistic way to put it. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware is chugging along. Joe Biden's in a position where he could say, I'll keep that U.S. attorney on board. He hasn't done that. And now we're talking about possible special counsel. All of that is kind of conspiring or getting together in my mind to think, maybe there's going to be something very big here by way of either an indictment or at the other end of the spectrum, a very soft plea or even a dismissal of the investigation. But it seems like we're going to have some news buried in this December-January period about Hunter Biden's fate.
Well, if it's found that there was no crime, I know that you believe that would make it look like favoritism. What is a soft plea? What does that mean, a soft plea?
Well, I mean, look, they're probably looking at a number of federal statutes that could be in play here. It's not just a tax case. You're looking at the FARA, the Foreign Agency Registration Act, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the money laundering, some pretty weighty federal charges that relate to all of this China, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan payment processes that were going on that the congressional committees looked at earlier. So if you wanted to come up with a soft resolution from Hunter Biden's perspective, and his attorneys are talking a lot to the U.S. Attorney's Office right now, you're talking about a tax case that effectively truncates or ends all of those other angles of investigation. So it could still be serious, could even include some jail time, but it would really have the effect of shortening this investigation in the most favorable way for the Biden family and for the next attorney general.
Jonathan Turley wrote an opinion piece in The Hill. He says that the biggest issue is that influence peddling is legal. It is the favorite form of corruption in Washington. So while it isn't okay to give Joe Biden an envelope of cash, he says giving it to his son is fine. And a special counsel, he says, would be a waste of time.
Well, I'm not sure that the results of what the investigations show would be determinative of whether you put a special counsel in place. In other words, the issue is the conflict issue for the executive branch, not what it's going to end up as. But what we don't know from all of the public stuff here is what did these foreign influences expect to get by making payments to Hunter Biden? That's the area of inquiry that could still lead to criminal prosecution.
Jim Trusty, a former DOJ prosecutor. Jim, we appreciate your time on this Christmas Eve. Thanks very much.
Sure. Thank you.
Lawmakers set for a showdown over that COVID relief bill, both Democrats and Republicans blocking attempts to alter the bill after the president called it a disgrace. Our panel will weigh in next.
Nobody in Congress has read because of its length and complexity. It's called the COVID relief bill, but it has almost nothing to do with COVID.
He threw more fear. He threw kerosene on a terrifier.
Strong words there on the stimulus shutdown, escalating on Capitol Hill after House Republicans and Democrats blocked each other's requests to alter a COVID relief and government spending package. This after President Trump blasted the agreement as he called on Congress to boost direct payments to Americans and reduce wasteful spending. Joining me now, Brad Blakeman, former Deputy Assistant to President George W. Bush, and Chris Hahn, host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. Good afternoon to both of you. Brad, critics of the COVID relief bill say there just isn't enough COVID relief in it. There's too much pork. So what's the debate about cutting the fat and giving more to Americans who are hurting right now?
Well, this should all be about COVID relief to Americans who are hurting. We need to put America first. There shouldn't be anything in this bill that is not germane or does not have a nexus to COVID relief for Americans, American businesses, American interests. That's not what this bill contains. It's 5,000 pages and almost $1 trillion. Nobody's read the bill. What is in the bill is a disgrace, whether Republican or Democrat. We need, and as the president rightfully said, this bill has to be for the American people. The paltry sum that Congress has allowed is a slap in the face to every American citizen who needs relief. So, Chris, I think President Trump is sticking to his guns, and he's right to do so.
Chris, can you defend the bill? And do you agree with the heat that the president's taking for waiting till the 11th hour to ask for those bigger checks?
So the president is lighting a match to this country as he walks out the door and setting it on fire. The bill was negotiated with the president's Treasury Secretary. The pork that the president and my good friend Brad here is complaining about was in the president's budget that he submitted to Congress. The president is complaining about money for the Kennedy Center, for example, money for Egypt and other foreign aid. These were the exact sums, almost or even slightly less, than the president actually requested in his budget. He is conflating both the COVID bill and the federal budget, which we need to keep this government open after Monday. He's conflating the two. Look, I would have liked to see $2,000 payments to individuals. I'd like to see unemployment benefits at $600 a week for people who are unemployed due to no fault of their own because of COVID. I'd like to see all those things. And if the president wanted that to happen, he probably should have been working Congress instead of sitting in the Oval Office with Sidney Powell and other conspiracy theorists trying to overturn an election that he lost by 7 million votes.
Okay, Brad, here's the next big question. Does the president veto this bill, or does he decide in the end it's better to just sign it and get those $600 checks in the mail?
Well, this is a huge game of chicken, and I wouldn't blame the president for trying to protect the American people and vetoing a bad bill that doesn't help them at all, doesn't help them in the way that's needed. And I'll remind Chris of what Speaker Pelosi said. She wasn't going to give President Trump a bill before the election because she thought it would help him. Donald Trump has been asking for a clean bill. Chris, you know, you worked up on the Hill. You know what a clean bill is.
Brett,
the problem is
Brett,
Congress can't bring themselves to have a clean bill and not pork it up with things that are which will not have one American worker the way it should.
Brad, look, if the president wanted a clean bill, the president should have worked towards a clean bill. The president has been sitting in his Oval Office sulking since the election. He has not done one thing for the American people. In fact, hold on, Brad. If he wanted a bill before the election, he should have worked on Mitch McConnell before the election. He said he wanted these $2,000 payments, which were more than the Democrats proposed in their bill back in May. He should have worked Mitch McConnell and got that done before the election. He didn't do these things. He doesn't like the job of president, which is why I don't understand why he's fighting so hard to keep the job. He doesn't like it. He doesn't do the work. It's amazing to me. It should be amazing to you. Brad, you saw a president work. You know how hard your former boss worked. This president did not work the phones. He did not work the Congress. And now he's complaining because he's saying they didn't read the bill. The bill is his budget. He is complaining about his own budget, which he never read, wasn't briefed on, didn't care about, because he did not care about this country. Merry Christmas, Mr. President. Stay at Mar-a-Lago.
Wow. All right. Listen, Chris, Brad, I know you guys could fight all day long, but we can't let you. We're running out of time.
And I love Brad, by the way, personally. You know that.
I just want to throw out that the question remains, and you can't answer this, is why Congress couldn't just craft something COVID-specific. We'll leave that till next time. Brad and Chris, thanks very much, and Merry Christmas to both of you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Some Christmas celebrations are looking different in these COVID times. Up next, the Pope's message to the world on this Christmas Eve. Limbaugh giving an emotional message during his final radio broadcast of the year as he continues to battle a terminal cancer diagnosis.
I wasn't expected to be alive today. I can't be self-absorbed about it when that is the tendency when you are told that you've got a due date.
This is from the president's Twitter account. Take a listen.
We are delivering millions of doses of a safe and effective vaccine that will soon end this terrible pandemic and save millions and millions of lives. We're grateful for all of the scientists, researchers, manufacturing workers, and service members who have worked tirelessly to make this breakthrough possible. It is truly a Christmas miracle.
The President and First Lady there. Pope Francis leading a Christmas Eve Mass from the Vatican. It took place earlier than usual this year to comply with COVID restrictions. Of course, we are here Monday through Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern. You can set your DVR and never miss a report. There were some pictures from the Pope's address here on this Christmas Eve. I am Rick Leventhal, in for Bill Hemmer. We are wishing you and yours a safe, healthy, and happy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's. Your World is next with Charles Payne in for Neil CAVUTO. Have a great afternoon, a great evening, and watch out for that storm on the East Coast. And thanks again to all of our service members serving overseas during this holiday. Take care.
I'm Charles Payne in for Neil CAVUTO, and this is Your World. Merry Christmas Eve and ho-ho no. What will President Trump do now that a House effort by both sides to change that spending and relief bill to his liking has failed? Expanded unemployment aid, that runs out on Saturday, and we could be facing a government shutdown Monday night. To Mark Meredith in West Palm Beach, Florida, on if President Trump will sign, seal, and deliver or not. Mark.
Charles, good afternoon. Merry Christmas. Right now, Congress is simply trying to figure out how serious to take the president's demand that he wants to see them increase the amount of money that would be in those stimulus checks from $600 up to $2,000. And that's what they're trying to figure out as these checks get sent out. Today, the drama was focused on what was happening on the House floor as Republicans refused to go along with the plan to try to increase that amount, despite pleas from the president and Democrats to do just that. The House is going to try this again on Monday with a roll call vote. But Democrats, they are imploring the president not to wait to ensure that relief is sent out.
This is Christmas Eve. Surely, the President of the United States, whether he's in Mar-a-Lago or any place else, ought to empathize with the pain and suffering and apprehension and deep angst that the American people are feeling this Christmas Eve and sign this bill.
The president arrived in South Florida last night. He didn't speak with reporters when he left D.C. or when he got here last night, and he hasn't talked to reporters today, but he has been tweeting quite a bit. He did complain in a White House video that there was too much money being spent on foreign aid in the larger spending package that was also approved by both chambers. And it's a complaint, though, some Republicans tell Fox News they agree with.
It's up to Congress to right this wrong, and I appreciate the Republicans standing firm on that, and I hope that we can eliminate that waste, fraud, and abuse in the budget.
Now, it's important to point out that the president has not said that he is going to veto this. He simply made his demands, said that he was disappointed with what was in this package. So we're trying to read the tea leaves here. They didn't have anything on the president's schedule today, only saying that he's doing meetings, having phone calls. They've already called a lid, so we're not going to hear from the president on camera today, Charles. He has been tweeting. Perhaps we'll see him tomorrow on Christmas Day. Charles, back to you.
Mark, thank you very much. So are we headed for a government shutdown? And what's the risk to both parties and the president? With me now, Democratic strategist Jessica Ehrlich and GOP strategist Amanda Mackey. Amanda, give us a read on where this might be going.
Well, look, I think it should come as no surprise that the president is upset that there's all this money being spent on foreign aid, and even to the Kennedy Center, a second round of $40 million in stimulus to the Kennedy Center. So, he's upset, and rightfully so. He believes that the number should be higher than 600, as do most Americans. But here's where I think really people should be angered by is the governors and the mayors throughout the country who are Democrats who have crushed their economies. That's why we're in this predicament where we have to have these large stimulus bills again. Look at the state of Florida. Our governor has done an incredible job of keeping our economy open. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. But New York, Washington, D.C., California, the fifth largest economy in the world, have all been decimated. Right. And so we do have to bring, much needed relief to Main Street. But this is largely as a result of Democratic governors and mayors failing their people.
Yeah, we are where we are. I mean, the MTA in New York City alone wants $4 billion out of that, but, perhaps less draconian measures wouldn't have lessened that amount. Jessica, it's really interesting because this is where you're getting an odd bipartisan roar of approval for President Trump, at least standing up and saying 600 is woefully low, particularly in one of the largest spending bills in the history of mankind.
I mean, certainly, I think $600 is too low for Americans at this point. I think most Americans agree with that. I think most Democrats agree with that. Unfortunately, no one asked me. The person they did ask while they were negotiating this bill over the last 6 months is President Trump. So to have a move at this point where the idea of $600 came from Secretary Mnuchin, that was what they had proposed. It's been negotiated back and forth repeatedly. It's a giant omnibus spending bill, as Amanda well knows, which is why all of these other spending measures are in there, because the government itself has not been funded. It was all postponed and tied together in one package, which is why we're looking at a possible not only government shutdown, but general economy shutdown, frankly, for the American people if it doesn't get passed. So to have a last-minute Christmas Eve veto over saying $2,000, why wasn't it said prior to the election? The president said the American people should have $2,000. Democrats could have gotten behind it. Republicans could have gotten behind it. But at this point, it's not going to. And you're seeing a lot of pushback from
President Trump asked for $1,200. I saw many reports of things like the Washington Post where there was talk of him asking for $2,000. I saw him offer $1.8 trillion before the election, and your party turned it down to help ensure that he would lose. They put politics over the American people. So I say pox on both houses. Now, the idea that somehow, it's no big deal because this is an omnibus budget. No, I accuse Congress of pushing this large gargantuan, the second largest spending bill in history, pumping in all kinds of pet projects like gender studies in Pakistan, and using the pain and suffering of the American public as a reason. It was all blocking. They used the pain and suffering to block, and then they pushed through this ugly thing behind it, and now they're saying, well, the president waited too late. It's never too late. We're talking about it right now. And Amanda, I think Republican lawmakers need to figure this out because their voters aren't happy either.
They're not, and rightfully so. I mean, again, to your point, the Pakistan gender studies, when people are suffering here at home, no one wants to see that. And any member of Congress who supports this deserves to not be reelected. And so very much to your point, I think, cut this pork spending that's going to countries, Cambodia and Pakistan, and all the pork that we've been hearing about in this bill. It's shameful. It really is. But look, Main Street needs help. We have to help. And I think that Congress needs to get its act together to see what they can do. Right. But at the end of the day, Congress is in its own fiefdom. There's 100 members of the Senate, 435 members in the House, and they have to agree on something that can come forward. And that bill now is getting sent to the president.
And they already did. I mean, Charles, I know that you're a very conservative person who doesn't like spending. To that point. But this bill, at this point, is only hurting the American people.
Well, let me ask you, Jessica, please, and I only have less than a minute, so please kind of be concise, but could there be time and room for a compromise, maybe getting back to $1,200 in direct checks to American households?
Well, they actually are going to be voting on Monday on $2,000. The problem is getting it out of the House. The House and Senate already passed it, and it's already come not only from Senator Blunt, but from McConnell and from Thune, in the Republicans leading the Senate, that they don't already agreed to the bill. They want the bill as it is, $600. They don't want any more. They don't want to increase spending, and that their projects and foreign aid, as Senator Blunt said, are in there and have been approved. So it's throwing chaos into this. And the problem is that the measures that are there to help small businesses, Americans across this country, to get them the help they need, $600 is obviously not sufficient. It's a drop in the bucket, but it's going to make a difference to somebody this Christmas. And the longer we wait to get them that aid, the worse it's going to be.
And we need to postpone. We need to postpone some of those pet projects. There's no way you cannot squeeze in an extra $1,200 in a $2.3 trillion overall package. There's absolutely no way. There's so much junk in there, so much unnecessary junk in there that they better figure it out. Ladies, thank you both very much. Really appreciate it. So from the chaos here to a little less of it across the pond, the UK and European Union finally striking a Brexit deal today. Greg Paulcott is in London with this big news. Greg.
Hey, Charles. What you might have heard a short time ago is a huge sigh of relief on both sides of the English Channel. Just in time for Christmas, a present in the form, yes, of a post-Brexit trade deal between the UK and the European Union. More than 4 years after the UK voted to leave the EU, after 9 months of negotiations, London and Brussels have finally decided how they'll do business with each other in just about a week's time. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted, "The deal is done," looking triumphant. Here is some of what he had to say today.
We've taken back control of every jot and tittle of our regulation in a way that is complete and unfettered. From January the 1st, we are outside the customs union and outside the single market.
Every jot and tittle, says Boris. The 2,000-page agreement spells out that Brits can trade goods with the EU without any tariffs or quotas. And this is key because there's something like $900 billion worth of trade between the two every year. The agreement resolves thorny issues about matching standards and fishing hauls. It was aimed at avoiding, crucially, Charles, a no-deal Brexit. And that of it could have incurred bottlenecks at all the border crossings around here, the kinds of disruptions we have been seeing this week as the UK and Europe deals with yet another crisis, and that's COVID-19. Not everybody was pleased. Come January 1st, there will be more limits on the movements of goods and the movement of people, and segments of the economy, Charles, were actually not touched in this agreement, including service and the financial sectors. But still, a bit of a nice holiday treat for a lot of people here and in Europe. And a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and all of yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg. 5 years coming. So what does it mean for us? Let's go to market watcher Frances Newton-Stacy. She's with me now. I got to tell you, I watched the entire press conference. There was overall optimistic, Frances, because both sides, it's been a long slog, right? They've really fought tooth and nail. I thought it was a sort of ugly scene earlier this week when France stopped 3,000 trucks from coming in, ostensibly over COVID-19. Be that as it may, we start a brand new day. They start one in Europe, and obviously it's going to change our relationships as well. How so?
Well, it's interesting because, the UK was sort of in alignment with the protectionism that was, touted by Donald Trump during his administration. And now we have Biden coming in, and we still have a lot of populism here in the U.S. and a lot of populism overseas. And it's going to be interesting to see how the globalism versus protectionism plays out in the new administration. There's some talk of them sending funds to NATO. There's some talk of, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, things like that. And that's going to really determine going forward our relationship with the UK. And the other really interesting thing is the UK sort of somewhat siding with the ideology of the US, put it in a more antagonistic position with China, which it's going to have to work out. And that's going to be sort of predicated upon how Biden manages sort of the situation that we have with China after Trump leaves office. As far as how does it affect the U.S., it's going to be all about financial services and those capital flows.
Well, I heard today both sides use the term free and fair trade, which I think a lot of Americans, even President Trump, would love to see with respect to China and anyone else. We believe in free markets, but not when you're ripping us off. But be that, we've got just a little bit of time left. The markets obviously had a fantastic year against the most remarkable backdrop you could imagine. How are you feeling as we head into 2021 with these markets?
Well, it's hard to tell over Christmas. There's no selling momentum, but even the stimulus deal being put off really wasn't, the markets just sort of, turned a blind eye, slept right through it. The S&P has to stay above 36, 81 kind of range, but we know Biden's coming in, Yellen's coming in. We expect more fiscal stimulus regardless what happens with this bill. We expect the dollar to move lower. We expect all of the things that have supported the equity markets to continue through the first and possibly the second quarter next year. So I think more upside to asset prices. Unfortunately, that's not helping Main Street, but hopefully we can converge a little bit more, the Main Street and the Wall Street coming into the new year.
Well, 50% of Americans have 401ks, so I think they're pretty happy, too. Frances Newton-Stacy, Merry Christmas. So who says a special counsel into Hunter Biden is DOA? High-level officials reportedly looking into one at the DOJ. Judge Ken Starr on why that's significant. In the cards, think again. Sources to Fox saying some high-level officials at the Department of Justice are discussing it, saying that a special counsel is warranted. So why is this significant? Well, let's ask former Whitewater independent counsel and Fox News contributor Ken Starr. Ken, thank you so much for joining us. What would be the significance if we were to get this special counsel?
And I do think, Charles, Merry Christmas, that it is much more likely than not that it will happen. And the significance is the special counsel, once appointed, is protected in the main from any interference with his or her investigation. It assures independence in the investigation, and that, of course, is important to the integrity of the investigation and the appearance of integrity.
So then that would be a de facto indictment or questioning the process that Joe Biden might go through with respect to picking his attorney general. I mean, I will put out there that Joe Biden has already said he won't bring up the topic of Hunter Biden with any of the potential candidates for the job. Right. But this seems to me that folks who are already in the Justice Department may want to just may not be so confident that that happens.
Well, without impugning at all the integrity of the vice president at all, the regulations that are in place, and those regulations have the force of law, call for the appointment of special counsel where there's a conflict or a potential conflict. That's not an indictment. It is simply a recognition that the President of the United States' son is under, and we know that he's been under investigation for 2 years. And we also know that it's likely that the president himself will be a witness in the investigation. I'm not suggesting he would be a subject, much less a target. So those are serious matters that would suggest to the Justice Department that to follow the regulations, to follow the law, a special counsel should be appointed.
I know you don't want to speculate, but you know, we've read a lot of information on this from emails and phone calls and things, and terms like the big guy and other things like that have been tossed around.
Yes.
You mentioned Vice President Biden, President-elect Biden being potentially a witness, but could he also become the subject of this special counsel?
Yes, it's too soon to tell right now, but what an honest prosecutor does is that he or she follows the facts. You develop the facts in a very orderly way, you analyze those facts, and then if the facts suggest it, you then go to the grand jury, the federal grand jury, and you say, this is what the evidence is showing. You've been hearing from witnesses, so we are now recommending to the grand jury that the following occur. Now, the Justice Department policy has historically been that you cannot indict a sitting president, and I don't expect that policy to change at all, were it to go in that direction.
Let me switch gears here. President Trump has begun pardoning folks, some high-profile names like Paul Manafort and Roger Stone. The media is going apoplectic over all of this already. And, you know, I did some research, and I saw where President Obama did 1,715 commutations, was more than all the 13 prior presidents combined. A lot of cocaine dealers, bank fraud, money laundering, and there were over 500 of those sentences were life sentences. So it just seems like the process, every president has the ability to use it, they exercise it. Do you see anything wrong with you know, the process or so far with President Trump's decisions?
I don't. I haven't analyzed each and every one. Full disclosure, I've made several recommendations myself, along with others, for the president to exercise what I think is one of the most fundamental powers, and that's to temper justice with mercy. The pardon power, but also the commutation power. And of course, President Clinton famously, on the day, his last full day in office, issued well over 100 pardons, some of them very controversial and quite criticized. It's going to be inevitable that a president exercising that power will undergo criticism, but that doesn't take away from the fact that the Constitution vests really an unreviewable right. It's a great prerogative. It's a great part of our constitutional system that we have the president, whether you agree with a particular decision or not, that can step in and say the Justice Department, in my view, or the justice system more generally, went too far, and we need to, again, temper justice with mercy.
Great words. We always appreciate it, Ken. We learn so much from you. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you real soon. Thank you so much, Ken Starr.
Thank you, Charles. Merry Christmas
so, folks,
to you.
Right now you're looking live at JFK Airport, where a flight from London is expected to arrive moments from now. Coming up, Aisha Hashmi on the restrictions and hefty fines those flyers could now face. And EMS workers in Pennsylvania are on the front lines in this COVID-19 fight, but are they getting passed over for the vaccine? City where in just a few moments from now, another flight from London is set to arrive amid worries about a new strain of coronavirus. Let's just say the city is not rolling out the welcome mat. We're back.